for you from here is you got your scanner working, so that's good. And I'm going to record this little bit about how to make this the right size and the things that you can do with Photoshop. One of the things that I find very confusing in Photoshop now is it defaults to this tab setup, so that you have to choose one tab or the other. You can't see both things at the same time. So you can change that by going to Window, Arrange, and then drop down to Float All in Windows. Now you can look at your pictures side by side, or multiple pictures on the same screen, which I think is really useful. Also, for some reason, it defaults to 2 rows for your panels, and I think that's redundant. I usually, let's see if I can pull this out. No, you're not going to let me do that, huh? All right, so you can change these, arrange these any way you like by just grabbing the top of them and moving them around. How familiar are you with Photoshop?
I'm familiar enough.
Okay. You can also, you can put this into one long string, but it cuts off the bottom part. And you can always scan these down, make these smaller. So the most important menu you're going to have is probably going to be the panels menu and the color. And you can do it by color this way or color this way. You can pull these off or throw them out, tear them away. Like this panel, I think is pretty much useless because I don't like their libraries. So you could throw that away. You could pull it off and just close it. Not permanently. So like I pull this off and I could put this anywhere I want to, but I could also just close it and it won't be there anymore unless I want it. Now, here's another useful one is history, which is basically undo, and properties, which tells you about the file. Right now it's showing it to you in, it says 150 pixels per inch, and you know it should be 72. And it gives you the width and the height in inches. Now, we don't want the width and the height in inches. We really want it in pixels because when you're dealing with computer graphics, you need to know how many pixels are in things, not how many inches, because inches is only useful when you're printing something. Okay? So what we can do is go into, it's under Edit, all the way down to the bottom, past this little arrow button. There's the Preferences. And setting your preferences in Photoshop, and you should go into preferences every so often and just play around with it just to see what kind of stuff it has. We'll start with the general, and you'll have some of these things. If your computer is running at good speed, you don't have to worry too much about it. If you like the Start Workspace when the document when you first open up Photoshop, then you could leave that, but I usually turn that off because I find I just want to go straight to Photoshop. I don't want to go through the Start Workspace, but that's just me. This thing, Export Clipboard, it means whatever you've copied onto your clipboard will stay on your clipboard after you exit Photoshop, which it depends on if that's something that sometimes it's not what you want because it might be a big image that you don't want to use anywhere outside of Photoshop. So here's interface. You can actually change the color theme of your Photoshop if you like a darker theme or a brighter theme. This is kind of fluffy stuff. Dynamic color sliders and menu colors are also kind of bonus. So if your computer's running kind of crappy, you can turn these off and it might run a little bit better. I'll go to Workspace, and here's where the tabs are. If you like the tabs, leave it. If you don't, turn them off. And then I would turn this off too because it snaps them back into tabs. And you don't need large tabs if you're going to be in tabs. Auto show hidden panels is probably a good thing to have on. You can always go back to your workspace preferences and change that if you don't like it. Tools. Like if you like a zoom wheel, a scroll wheel for zooming, you can turn that on. If your computer's running slow, animated zoom is another one of those bells and whistles you really don't have to have on, so it could save you some processing power. Zoom resizes windows is, I think, really useful because then when you zoom in and out, it actually fits the picture in the window around the picture. I usually don't use flick panning because it's processor power and it seems kind of redundant. It seems kind of frivolous. I don't use gestures, but I'm not going to turn that off. But if you get tired of the tooltips, you can turn those on and off too.
Okay.
And if you use
I didn't even know.
tooltips?
Yeah, I didn't even know any of this.
Well, yeah, most people don't. And here's the thing with Photoshop is that I've been using Photoshop since 1989, 1990. So like back in the day before there was even multiple undos, way before that. So a lot of this stuff it's been built on, and it changes a little bit with each new rev, but a lot of people don't know about it because they set this stuff up thinking they know what people want. But you're using Photoshop as a very specific thing. You're using it for a very specific purpose, and it's the nice thing about Photoshop is you can customize it to be exactly the way you like it. So all of these tools, all these things you should play with and see if you like them or not. After the tools, the history log, I don't usually worry about. File handling, this would be useful because you know how it asks you if it wants you to save the PSD all the time? Just save it. I mean, why do you don't need to ask, just do it. You can increase the automatic recovery information if you want to, or decrease it. It can be more or less than 10 minutes if you want. If you're tired of it asking for things, you can turn that stuff off. You can also reset all the preferences. If you turn something off or on that you don't like, you can reset the preferences and do it all over again. Here, it's also telling you it always saves an image preview, and it always adds the file extension, which is good because you want to know and you want to be able to see it. This is your quick export, which is probably why you're getting all your screenshots as PNGs. When you save it to JPEGs, they'll come out as JPEGs, which is a lot more convenient and more useful. And nobody I know of in the school requires PNGs unless it's a specialized class. Asks you where to export it, so that's good. Performance here, if you've got 6 megabytes of RAM, 6,000 megabytes, what is that? 6 gigs of RAM, I think. You can. I set it to be 80%, but 70% is within the ideal range. As long as Photoshop's using it within the ideal range, that's good. Here, every time you touch a file, it saves a copy of it, so you can undo it. So the more undos you have, and as you can see, you can have up to 1,000 undos if you want. But that really takes up a lot of space on your computer. So usually 20 or 30 is pretty good. 50 seems a little excessive to me, but that's me. If you find you need more undos, then by all means, go back and reset it. Let's see. Scratch disk is good if you have a partition drive and you have 2 drives, and you can add, or if you've got an external drive. I've got 4 external drives, so I have all of my drives added a scratch disk. A scratch disk is essentially space that Photoshop can use to store stuff while it's working on stuff, and then it takes it away when it closes. You can change how your cursors look if you want. This is pretty standard. You can change how your transparency looks if you want. There's different sizes and there's different colors if you want. Or you can make custom colors for your grid. That's really just for your own specific use. It has no effect on the file at all. Now, units and rulers. This is why when it's showing up, we're asking for information. It's showing up as inches. We want it to show up as pixels. So we're going to turn the units into pixels because we're working on the computer for a computer. We're going to be delivering our work as a computer-based file, not as a print file. So knowing what the pixels are is really important. Automatically, we'll make a print document at 300 and a screen, or just a computer document at 72. So the screen can't show anything better than 72 DPI, but the dots per inch or the pixels per inch, but the pixels are so tiny. The screen resolution itself, you may have like, I don't know what your screen resolution is. Mine has like some god-awful number like 24 or something because it's a Mac, big screen Mac. So you can fit a lot of stuff on there. And it just means there's more pixels on the actual physical screen. But the image itself can only display 72 pixels per inch. It just depends on how many pixels are crammed onto your screen. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how I understand it. These are colors for rulers and guides and grids that you can set, and I can show you how to do that. This is your plugins. That's pretty standard. The only other thing that we found that was kind of unusual was, I'm looking for, there was something that gave it a problem, but I can't find it here. There was something that was turned on on one girl's computer that made a big difference, but it doesn't seem to be here. So you must not have that problem. It's something to do with the video card. So you see, you can reset the preferences and the warnings if you want to, but we're not going to. We're going to leave it like that. So now when you open up a file, it should open up like this. And when you zoom in and out on a file, it should go with it, the outside of the screen. If we zoom out, it should shrink to accommodate it, and I personally find that a lot more useful. Okay, so now we've done that. We set it up, and what you can do here now is, this is where if you lose a palette, one of these panels over here, if you lose one of the panels, you can open the window and add the panels. Like if you want to have, let's see, like text. That's one that I usually have on. Characters, right there. Now I've got the character and paragraph. So I can add that to my toolbar. And I like putting it in one long row because it's screen real estate. You know, it's like, how much real estate do you have? You want to give yourself as much working area as possible. So finally, when you have everything set up exactly the way you like it, then you'll want to save your workspace. So these are the built-in workspaces, but you're going to make a new one, and you can call it whatever you want. I usually call it mine. And you want it to save any keyboard shortcuts you make because you want to use them again. You want it to save where your menus are and what menus you have showing, and you want it to save your toolbar. So that way, if you accidentally screwed up and got rid of the panels and maybe, you know, did something crazy with some stuff and you can't get it all back, all you have to do is go back to Window, Workspace, and say Reset, and everything will come back the way you had it set, the way you like it.
Okay.
So if you screw it up and you open some panels or close panels you don't like, or they're in all different weird positions, that's the easiest way to just set it back up. If you decide you don't like this workspace that we set up here, then you could always try like painting. It gives you a different set of tools. I mean, it's all the same tools. Photoshop has all these same tools, but it just shows the different tools that you might need. This might be more for actually painting. And it looked like you had a photography class, so maybe you might want to check out the photography workspace because it'll have another different set of tools that might be useful to you. And then you can always go back to the one that you made the way you like it. Okay. Now, when you have an image like this scanned, the first thing you'll want to do is, the first thing that I do is usually trim it. It's kind of off center and it's cut off here. So you might want to rescan it. So I'm going to just trim this one since there's a lot of extra space here. And all that space takes up space and takes away from the image. So we go to crop and pull in these edges here to get rid of the extra white space that's not necessary. And also it allows you to kind of arrange your image nicely on the page. You know, that's all part of it, composition and stuff. And you just hit enter and then it's trimmed. Now I want to see how big it is. I'll go to image and then go to image size, which is Control-Alt-I. You can learn how to use that. Now here we see, this is at 150 dpi. We don't want that. First thing we're going to do is change the dpi. So change that to 72. That will resize it. And this lock is on. This should always be on unless there's some reason why you want to distort your image. If you don't want your image to be distorted when you change the size, make sure that lock is on. And this is now the new dimensions because we reduced the pixels by half the density. So it's 400 by 480 by 680. It was before that like 1400 or something. So you've lost half the pixels, but you can make this up to 800. So this should have come up as in pixels, not inches. You can actually go ahead and restore some of those pixels if you want. only because they were there before. I wouldn't add pixels to it if it weren't that. When I resized it, I lost so many pixels, 72. So you want to know that your image is going to be 72 dpi and 800 pixels or less in the longest dimension. And if it's not, you just want to change the longest dimension to 800 or 1,000. It can be 1,000, and that will save your image appropriately for the specifications required in the classroom. The other thing you might consider doing is, because this is so pale, a tool that I like to use is the under Image Adjust. I use this a lot. Levels. And with levels, you get a histogram, which is essentially all the pixels on your image are piled up all the way to the top, so it's a very pale image. So you can either hit auto and have it reset it to see if you like that, or you can pull the triangles in and increase the contrast a little bit. But you got to be careful with it.
Looks a lot better.
You got to be careful. You don't want to overprocess it. Anytime you do this kind of stuff to it, you're losing data. You're taking out data. So you just have to be kind of careful. You don't want to overprocess it. So you want to make sure it's already sized down, trimmed and sized down before you start messing with this. Another thing you can do besides levels is if it comes through a little bit yellowish or bluish or weird like that, you can go into hue and saturation, and just, the saturation is nothing more than color, right? So you can take the saturation out, and it basically turns it black and white without turning it into a black and white document. So it's a little bit brighter, a little whiter. And then the last thing that you might want to do is contrast. And you can use the auto ones as well, but I like a little more control. So we go to brightness, contrast. Some of them have hotkeys set up, some of them don't. You can increase the contrast a little bit, but you got to be careful not to, like I said, not to overprocess it. Maybe make it a little brighter, not too much, maybe not. I tend to just want to have a good amount of contrast, but not so much contrast that you lose the details. Like, I can see that you sketched it. I can see sketchy stuff here, so that's good. I like to see how you've built the image. And now this is a PNG, which we don't want, of course. We want to save it as a JPEG. So we're going to save as. And we're going to choose save type as JPEG. And you'll want to save it. It's going to end up saving it back where it was, so that's good. So if you want to change where it's saved, this is the time to do it. Once you hit save, once you hit save, you get one more dialog box, which will tell you how big, and it doesn't seem to make that much difference. I would keep it to baseline. You can try different ones to see if it makes any difference, but this one's fine. And it's only 129K right now, so why not take it to the maximum? That's what it says in the specs anyway. Save it as a maximum quality, because then it's not, anytime you save it as a lower quality, you lose data. So that's like degradation of the image. So you want to try not to degrade the image if you can. So 250K is totally fine. That's well within the specification. So I say OK, and now it's saved it as a JPEG, and you can see it's like 800 or 600 by 800 or so. It's a little bit brighter. You can open the previous one and compare it if you want to. I think we can do that from here. Yes. And you can see a couple of things to notice. See this 33 1/3 right here? It's actually showing this at 33 1/3%, and this is showing it at 100%. You want it to be near 100%. This one here is showing at 16%, so you can imagine it's even bigger. It had to shrink it down to fit it on the page. So if you go here and you want to see it at 100%, get this. And this is the 100% of what this one is. That's how much bigger it actually is. It's so big it's going off the page. So that's why we shrank it down. because we're not going to see it we don't need to see it that big. Not 100%. We want it just to fit on the page, on the screen. That's pretty much the gist of it. I think there's a video demo in the classroom that shows if you have 3 images, like you're supposed to have 3 of these things side by side.
Mm-hmm.
I would take each one down and make it look pretty. And then once you have your 3 images together, then you go to image canvas size. Actually, let me change the size of this before we do that. I'm going to trim it a little bit. So learn your hotkeys because they're really useful. I like to use my hotkeys. And trim it a little bit here. And we will image size it to a good size. So see, that's like way, so first do the resolution. Now it's 2000 by 3500. So we'll do the resolution first, and that usually fixes it. Yeah, that's fine. It's 400 by 800. That's all you have to do. If it was still like way high, you would drop the pixel line as well.
Okay.
Say that, and we can make it fit in the screen by just going like that. Now it's back to, now if we set it to 100%, view at 100%, it should be on the page. Yep, like so. So you might want to do a little bit of contrast, but be careful not to do too much. So let's see, Control L is your levels. So you could try auto first and see if you like the way it looks that way. Might be enough. You might want to pull this up just a titch. And that looks probably more like used charcoal. So it looks more like a charcoal drawing now. And that's good. Then I would save them individually just to have a backup. But when you're ready to add them all together, go to image again, and this time go to canvas size. And if you have 3 images and they're all about 500 pixels across, then what we want to do is make this 1500. Whoops, not that much. 1500 pixels across. And this will, you can make this image stick to the left or to the right or stay in the center. And I wouldn't make it a background. The background color right now is red. So you might want to change it to white for the canvas extension. So it's going to add space to your canvas, which isn't really showing you how it did that, but there, if you zoom out. Now you have enough room to paste the other images in there. Do you know how to do that? Right? There's 2 ways to do it. Well, there's always more than 2 ways to do it, but one way to do it is just use your move tool and drag it from one document to the other, and then you can just place it. Or you can select all, Control A, selects all, Control C copies it, and then going to the other document, Control V will paste it. So now we got 2 copies of him right there. And then once you're done with that, you get all 3 of your images on there and you like the way they look. Then you can look at the layers and you see you've got 3 layers. So you want that to be 1 layer, flatten it. So we go to layers and you go all the way down to the bottom of the panel, down, flatten image. I set a hotkey for that, so I just have to hit a key on my keyboard to flatten the image. And then you're ready to save it. And you can save it as, the file, save it as a JPEG. I think in the classroom it tells you to reduce this to 800 pixels again, but that makes it awfully small. So I don't really need you to do that. I just need you to have it within that original 72 dpi, 600 by 800 or so. Within 1,000 pixels will be fine. And I think that's about the size of it. So that's how you change the size in Photoshop. Did you have any other questions? Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm just really happy you actually got my scanner to work. Like, thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
God,
no problem.
So much anxiety.
Well, hopefully it'll stay working. I would find out why this is doing strange things. You might want to run a diagnostics on your computer because you can how to do that, right?
Yeah.
You can do that yourself with disk management is one way to do it. think if we go into settings, go to your control panel. It used to be called a control panel. Doesn't seem to be anymore. Maybe it's system.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to do like somewhere in there, you'll be able to find, you don't have virus protection on, but you do have the other stuff on. So
I do. That's what my Avast does.
Pardon?
So.
I'm sorry?
That's what my Avast does. It's like a virus protector thing. I gotta run it.
Okay. Okay, so that looks like that takes care of that. So we've got some more people in class here. Anybody else have any questions relating specifically to observational drawing? You can either unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in the chat box. I'm recording this part, so I'll post this in the classroom today.
Thank you again so much, Professor.
Oh, you're welcome. No worries. No worries. My pleasure. And if anytime you need any help or anything, this is the easiest thing to do. I just start a GoToMeeting and share screens, and you can show me what's going on with your computer or what's going on with your stuff, and then I can help you with it.